What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly, Week 17 to be exact. Used to be the finale, will not this year. Next week, we'll see that kind of bonus game, if you will, but plenty to discuss heading into Week 17. And to help me break it down, as always, it's my co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Fittingly, it's a little gray, overcast, a little, some tears rolling down from the clouds. And I got to say, for me, that's indicative of how I feel with the passing of the great John Madden.
Yeah, we're gonna lead off with that. The very unfortunate news of Coach Madden passing away. It's been about, maybe a little bit less than 24 hours as we record here on Wednesday. I myself did watch with the family on Christmas morning before the first football game, watch that Madden special. It was great to see a lot of what I've never seen. But Raider Jim, I'm going to have you start it off. Obviously, when you think John Madden, more than likely, you may think video game, and that's perfectly fine, but more than likely you think Oakland Raiders or Los Angeles, wherever they were at the time. But it was the Raider Nation. That was John Madden. So it's only fitting that you give us your thoughts on the tragic passing of Coach Madden.
Yeah, Al Davis, who was a youngster when he took over the Raiders in his 30s, he thought, if I can do it and I'm getting this opportunity, that was right in his wheelhouse. And so when this young John Madden guy was available to become a coach, he just plucked him out and said, okay, run this team and let's do it. And I think it was the personality of John Madden. No nonsense, straight from the hip. Didn't mind listening to what Al Davis had to say, but Al Davis had a great respect for John Madden. And with that, they were able to collaborate. And obviously, they did something right because he went to a lot of playoff games. They won the reason they got their first Super Bowl was because of John Madden. And the tie between you and I and John Madden is, John Madden was an Eagle, for goodness sakes. He wanted to be a Philadelphia Eagle, and then he got his knee issue, and that put him back into, or that's what got him started into the coaching. Now, something else, the big tie between the Raiders and San Diego sports. Well, Al Davis was on, and I've mentioned it before, but he was on the San Diego Charger coaching staff many, many years ago with Chuck Noll, the revered Chuck Noll from the Steelers. And not long after he took over the Raiders and Don Coryell was coaching the Aztecs, John Madden was on his coaching staff. So John Madden, he went through San Diego as well to get to the Raiders. And just one of the stories that always stands out, while I never, of course, aside from watching him at Qualcomm Stadium or the Murph, however we want to call it, back in the 1977-78, the guy I worked with, we were both Raider fans. We'd talk all about the Raiders, and he took off one weekend because he wanted to go see the Charger Raider game up in the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. And when he came back, I said, what was it like? How was it? And he goes, you won't believe it when I tell you. He says, we're in the hotel bar. He says, and we are just getting blitzed. He says, and all of a sudden, Stabler walked in and Hendricks walked in. He says, he said it was like half the team is in. And they're drinking and they're having a great time. And so he started talking to Stabler, and he's like, but it's like going on midnight. Don't you guys got a game tomorrow? Isn't there a curfew? And Stabler told him, Coach just says, make sure we show up to play. We don't have curfews. And that's how Madden ran his team. Now, he jumped on them if they didn't execute, but you hardly ever saw a Madden team that didn't execute. So the guy knew his ability, the psychology of the game, and to work with his players and his personnel. Wow, that guy was an absolute genius.
Yeah, he was. I don't remember the quote or the tweet, but somebody put up, for a man who never played professional football, he may have the biggest impact on it. And for me, obviously, a little younger, John Madden for me was the Fox, Pat Summerall and John Madden, that seemed to be, before NFL Sunday Ticket, before, being able to go wherever you wanted and see whatever game you wanted here or there. You had the Fox game or the CBS game, maybe both. More than likely, it was going to be Madden and Summerall. More than likely, it was going to be a Cowboy game. And it was, kind of the soundtrack to life. And then for me, also the video game, obviously Madden, that is so popular. And despite my qualms about, as bad, it's gotten pretty bad, nothing to do with John Madden, but that's for a whole other podcast. That's another, those games, it was John Madden and Pat Summerall, calling the game. I'll do the air quotes, but that was the soundtrack. He was truly larger than life. And I know towards the end, he worked on the, rules committee and things like that. So this is somebody that, obviously a football lifer, somebody that affected and touched a ton of people inside the game and out. Football would not be what it is. I think football would still be big, but it would not be what it is if it was not for John Madden. So, what a great life. Obviously the details, all we hear is it's unexpected, but I don't really need to get into that. This isn't TMZ. So our thoughts and prayers out to the Madden family and everyone affected by this. And I can't wait to see what not only the Raiders, but I think the NFL as a whole does going down the road, maybe a Super Bowl situation, halftime ceremony, something like that. We'll see how that goes. But moving on to week 17, very fitting. We will start with Coach Madden's Raiders as they take on the Indianapolis Colts. That game will be in Indianapolis. Both teams in the playoff hunt. The Raiders outside looking in the 9th spot, and the Colts, after a resurgence, have blossomed or has boomed all the way up to the 5 seed. The current line is the Colts by 6.5. The over-under here is 44.5. I will say, looking at Vegas Insider right now, I've never heard of Superbook, but they seem to think about this game completely different. So if you have a book with Superbook or you want to open it up, they have the over-under at 41 and Indy only 2.5-point favorites. So I don't know if they think Wentz is just out or what, but if you have Superbook or if you want to give them a try, the numbers very different there, but everywhere else across the board seems to have it around those numbers. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The Raiders pretty much, you have to win out and get some help elsewhere as they head to Indy.
Well, I'll tell you, the very first team to ever come from a wild card spot and win the Super Bowl, that would have been the Oakland Raiders. So what, it's this would be right up there with Rudy. If the Raiders can play their way in and they go with the angle of John Madden looking down on the team and they did it for Coach Madden, wow, wouldn't that be something? Now, do I think that's going to happen? Not in my wildest dreams, but as a closet writer, what a fantasy. Going into Indianapolis, we've got down -6.5, Indianapolis, 44.5 on the over-under. I will tell you, as of today, they're saying Wentz is out. He's not playing. And that being the case, they've got 13 players on the COVID protocol list, including two cornerbacks, 2 safeties, and 3 linebackers. Wow. Even the Raiders might be able to run on that team. Who knows? I mean, anything can happen. The Raiders put together a pretty decent game. Ugly as it was, I shouldn't say decent. They had a better running game than they had in a while last week against, of course, it was against the Broncos, who were also pretty beat up. Going into this one in the Dome, I don't like 44.5. I think under. I think it's just going to be ground and pound. Indianapolis is going to do what they do. It's going to be that trenches thing. How good can the defense be for the Raiders? Now the Raiders on the other side of this, they got Nate Hobbs out, which is a big blow to the defense, along with Trayvon Mullen. Now, I saw earlier that Perriman was going to be out again, and if that's the case, and we already know that Jonathan Abrams is out on the injured list, then it's just, that's not a good thing for the Raiders on the defensive side of the ball. Still, I think the Raiders, if it's 6.5, I'll take the Raiders to cover at 6.5. Give me a half point. I'll take it. Raiders +7, but I still think under 44.5, under 45 is what we're looking at.
Yeah, the big thing here now, it is important, I guess, to kind of point out. I know the CDC cut the time off in half, or the precautionary time, whatever that is, from 10 to 5 days. And then kind of in response, the NFL said they will do the same thing. I don't know what the exact number is. So it's not 100%, but it, as of right now, if the game were to happen, in the next 24 hours, Wentz would not be able to play. So I do think that's why it's 6.5. I think the bettors, or at least Vegas, is kind of betting on the fact that Wentz will play, because look, Sam Ehlinger, unless there's something that they saw in the preseason, I don't know how they cover 6.5. They may win by a field goal, but I don't know how they do that. I mean, look, Jonathan Taylor is the cog to this team. He's right up there with Derrick Henry in terms of seasons of pass. He's been incredible. And then if Ehlinger does have to play, you have to imagine he's going to get a ton of looks. I'm not touching this game until I know for fact if Wentz is going to play. And to be honest, by then it will probably be too late. In terms of the over-under, 44.5. I do like the under here. I think we have two teams that are at the very least above average. Indy's defense is really good. The Raiders has been sporadic. The Raiders are just so up and down. I'm preaching to the choir with Raider Jim. I can only imagine how his frustrations are with the team like that, but it's just so difficult to kind of diagnose what that offense is going to do. But the one consistency all season has been Derek Carr is going to make mistakes, probably multiple. So really, until that changes, I'm going to look at the under 6.5. Once again, if you really think Wentz will play, or isn't going to play, now's your chance to kind of jump on this. But once again, I think if Wentz does somehow play, I think Indy does cover this, because Indy's got to think that they still have a chance to win the division. I don't think that's clean.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I will tell you, I'm scrolling here and I keep going up and down, up and down, up and down, because I'm on the MyBookie site. They don't even have this game listed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even listed. Wow.
I would not be surprised, because like I said, 6.5, I think putting that out for the betting public right now with
I was all over it.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's about a 70% chance Wentz doesn't play. And that's probably on the low end. It might even be closer to 80, 85. And once again, if you believe that that he won't play, you have to jump on this now. But once again, try and get this out as soon as possible. But hopefully by the time this hit the airwaves, A, it will still be bettable, and B, it will be in this range. But once again, I think that Superbook, that once again, never heard of that, but I think that they're expecting Wentz not to play, and that's why it's -2.5 and the over-under is 41, as opposed to 44.5 and Indy being 6.5 point favorites, which is, if it's on the board, that's where else goes. So moving on to two teams that are both completely eliminated from playoff contention. We are going to have the New York Giants head to Chicago. The Bears will be 6-point favorites here. The over-under is going to be 37.5. In terms of the weather, it's going to be high teens at best, very, very cold. Snow is a possibility. That's going to kind of be a theme for a lot of these East Coast games. Really, any of these outdoor games that are not on the West Coast, you're going to have a lot of possible weather, but it's not going to be terribly warm, especially in Chicago. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Chicago 6-point favorites at home against the Giants.
It's cold. COVID's running rampant, and I think they should cancel this game. I mean, as you and I were saying earlier, but seriously, the Giants, they're just not good. Come on, they're going into Chicago, and Chicago's a 6-point favorite. That's the best thing that's happened to the Bears all season long. I think they cover the 6. 37.5 is the over-under. Given the weather forecast, I don't see it going over 37 by any means. So let's just go ahead, give the Bears the game, and start looking forward to the offseason for these two teams.
Yeah, I'm myself personally, I'm not really touching the spread. I'm not 100% sure Chicago's 6-point favorites against anybody, but them being at home with the weather. Look, Jake Fromm. I sent a little text during Sunday. It was 3-3 at halftime. And I remember, our old friend Craig Mizrak, when the Bengals were drafted number 1 overall, I kept giving him smack that, Bengals are going to take Jake Fromm over, number 1 overall. And I kept thinking the karma that would come my way if Jake Fromm kind of eliminated the Eagles from playoff contention. Obviously, that didn't happen. I don't know if Jake Fromm's an NFL quarterback, but that offensive line did him absolutely no favors. I don't know who's starting. I really don't care. As Raider Jim said, this game should be canceled. It is what it is. I do like the under here, though. I mean, 20-17 is the maximum that I can see this going, and that still stays under the 37.5 I think you can find. So, I don't, no one gets over 20 in this game. And that's if you have the best weather possible. And I don't think we're going to see that. It might not be inclement weather, but I don't think it's going to be easy for anyone, especially considering it's probably Mike Glennon, Jake Fromm, or Justin Fields, who are not exactly cold weather experienced quarterbacks. So moving on to a game that, somewhat matters, at least for one team. And that one team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who hold the 4 seed. They will take on the New York Jets. Tampa is 13.5 point favorites. The over under here is 45.5. The weather in East Rutherford will be, sounds like in the mid 50s. Rain is possible, but mid 50s in early January, that is not inclement weather for that neck of the woods. So I don't think we'll see that. Obviously, if we see rain coming in, that may affect things. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on maybe one of the biggest mismatches we'll see all weekend, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading up to take on the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Jets have proven themselves week in and week out for the most part. They're eliminated now. It's going to be nasty weather over there. I understand there might be another storm that's already headed that way. So it's just going to be ugly. I like under in this one, under 46 maybe, give it a half point just to do it. But does Tampa Bay cover by 2 touchdowns? Probably. If you want to cheat it down to 13, go ahead. But I don't think it's not a dumb bet to take Tampa Bay to cover.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect number. 14 or more, you're just asking for a backdoor. I think this game's going to go into the fourth quarter. Tampa Bay up 20, 21, 24 points. Maybe see Tampa make it, or the Jets make it a little more interesting down the stretch in terms of the number. But I think anything 13.5 or lower, you can feel good about. We talked about it last week. Tampa got shut out. They responded in a big way, just like we expected against a bad team. Well, guess what? The Jets are probably an even worse team than Carolina. It is going up to New York. I don't think weather will be too much of a factor once again, unless it's crazy. Brady can pretty much fight through anything. It's not like he is a Tampa Bay quarterback, at least, in his, weather mode. So he can fight through that. The one, I think, big factor here also is where Tampa Bay is, because in the playoff picture, nobody in those division winners wants the 4 seed. That is, not death sentence, but oh goodness, we got to go to Green Bay division weekend, more than likely. And I think for Tampa Bay, they have to look at it. We have to win out, hope we can pass somebody and deal with Green Bay when we deal with Green Bay, hopefully on championship weekend. They did it last year, got the job done. But I really do think for Tampa, this isn't, okay, we're playing the Jets. This is no, we have to keep winning. No let-ups. I don't think Brady's going to let it happen. I think that the Tampa Bay is really going to get things done. And I do also like the under. I think Tampa Bay's defense just smothers bad offenses. And we've seen that pretty much the last 3 weeks. Even when they lost to New Orleans, you can't fault the defense. It gives up 9 points on the road. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was at home, but still 9 points. You expect to win a game like that, and they didn't. That's not on the defense. So moving
so
on.
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Going into this game, 10 minutes left in the third quarter, Tampa Bay is up by 10 to 13 points, and the defense is playing well. Do they sit Brady? Because now we're talking that extra week. We're talking all the COVID stuff going on. Do you have to start looking at protecting your starters? If you know you're not going to lose that 4 seed that you have, do you risk it and leave him out there?
That's a great point, because there are going to be certain things. I think this is a 10 a.m. game, if I'm not mistaken. More than likely, I think it's a 10 a.m.
Yes.
game. So I think in their mind, they're going to be kind of looking at it. We have to win. If it was a 125 game, there could be things early on I think that magic number, I don't think we see Brady get sat unless we see 42-0 like we saw with Kansas City until the fourth quarter. And I think that magic number is probably 21. I think a lot of coaches talk about 3 touchdown lead. They want 3 full touchdowns so that, if it does get back down to 1 score, they can throw Brady back in there. But that's, I think, a big part of it as well. And Brady's probably got to be a pretty tough guy to pull, right? He's really got to be on board with that. I'm not saying he run things kind of like LeBron does, because I think different mindsets. I think Brady's more, I'll do it for the team, but he's also going to throw in his 2 cents. But that is definitely something you have to keep an eye on. If, like we said, if they're up, 31-0 at halftime, sure. It might be time to start thinking about, getting the backups in, or at the very least, rotating a lot more than what we've seen. And if that's the case, then it may make that spread a little. But even then, I don't know if the Jets are good enough to do anything against Tampa Bay's backups. Maybe slows down the offense, but I don't think the offense for the Jets gets rolling because of mass substitution. So
right.
Moving on to a matchup against 2 playoff contenders, the Falcons. Still alive, and they got to feel at least somewhat okay. Probably not going to make the playoffs. They need help, but they are the 9 seed at the moment, the second team out, if you will. They'll head to Buffalo, who in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks has gone from kind of the dumpsters all the way back up to the division lead. The Bills are 14.5-point favorites. 44.5 is the over-under. The weather is looking like we could possibly see some snow, maybe some rain or sleet, I believe is what they call it. Mid-20s. Once again, we are recording Wednesday, and we missed a lot of them. There were a lot of different weathers from when we reported last time, so a lot of things changed. But it's not going to be pretty in Buffalo. I can guarantee you that, at least weather-wise. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's not going to be a scoring game, so under 45 in this one. I think you're safe with that. Buffalo at minus 14.5. The thing is, Atlanta has put together every now and then these random games, and Buffalo has put together these inconsistent random games. I don't know that I would take Buffalo 14.5 on this one. That is what it should be. Is that what it's going to be? Probably not. That's too much. That's just too much, because, as you said, they're probably not going to make it, but by gosh, Atlanta's got to go all out on this one. And who knows, they may put together a scheme to their favor. And again, snow, rain, or, any combination of the two, sleet, that changes the whole dynamic out there for the guys in the trenches, for the running, for the passing. All of it changes. And then pretty soon that 14.5 points, I think even just looking at the weather, 14.5 is too much.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Atlanta isn't fantastic. They're not a team that's going to, probably make the playoffs. And even if they do, it'll be kind of one of those feel-good stories. And then they'll bow out as the 7th seed. What's interesting to me, obviously I highly doubt this is the case, but hey, Monday morning, I would not be surprised if Arthur Smith got an email from a Mr. Belichick, and Belichick said, "This is all the info I have on the Buffalo Bills. Every single thing, go out, get the job done," because at the expense of the Patriots, the Bills have risen in not only the division, but also in the playoff picture. So the Patriots are going to be pulling very hard for Atlanta, because I believe with a win, Buffalo clinches. Nothing else has to happen. So Buffalo in control of their destiny. 14.5 though, not for me. I totally agree with you. Same thing with the over-under. Give me the under. Josh Allen, he makes some really good throws, but a lot of them are, those cross the body or opening up himself. The grip is a part of that, and you're not going to have that no matter what. Even if it's not raining at the time, there's going to be moisture on the ground at some point. The ball's not going to be the normal, sticky self, whatever you want to call it. So give me the under. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how Atlanta responds. But I think it's the perfect storm. Like you said, Atlanta, a team that kind of plays up sometimes, and Buffalo, a team that plays down. 14.5 points. I think anything 8 or more, I would say you feel pretty good with Atlanta. But Moving on to a possible playoff matchup. Speaking of teams that have tumbled a bit, the team that we expect to be the number 1 seed in the NFC early on, the Arizona Cardinals, all the way down to the 5 seed. They head to Dallas. The Cowboys are the 2 seed currently. In this one, the Cowboys are 5.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 51.5. Obviously, weather is going to be a factor in Jerry's World's Dome. I'll get this one started with the NFC East. Arizona's in trouble. They're in big time trouble. And you have Dallas that is in the same boat as the Rams now and the Buccaneers. They're in that precarious spot where musical chairs. The 2 and 3, everybody wants the 2. That's great because then you get a home game in divisional round. But the 3 isn't the end of the world. You don't have to go to Green Bay division round weekend. So I think Dallas is looking at it knowing that they will be able to get the 2 seed or be in the driver's seat for that 2 seed. I think they keep rolling. 5.5. I'd like it a lot more if it was closer to 3, but I think you're okay with 5 here. I think Arizona, like I said, is in trouble. I haven't seen too many defensive units that are as good as the Dallas Cowboys, not only just on the field, but it's also creating turnovers. And to be honest, I hate to say it, but if you're an Eagle fan, you have to hope that the Cowboys get everything they want this weekend, so that we can go, or they can come to Philly with, their backups and be perfectly fine with wherever they are in the playoff spot. So it's a little weird, but I do like Dallas to cover here. Arizona, I think is just the momentum has faded heavily. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The Cardinals heading to Dallas.
Yeah, I hope Arizona turns it around, plays the game of games like they haven't played in the last 15 weeks, because whether, again, my old buddy Tim Conway, when he has something to say, and it might be controversial, his line is always, "Yeah, well, it's my name on the door." And so, yeah, it's my name on the mic. So I don't care if anybody agrees with or appreciates what I'm going to say. I thought Dallas's game this past week against the Washington football team was one of the most Bush League displays I've ever seen. And I don't think it was necessary to take a team so depleted, so beat up. It's like we were the big bullies in the school ground, and we were the 8th graders, and we went and we taught those 6th graders and 5th graders a lesson. I hope they get it turned around on them this week. It was just uncalled for. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, going into this game, I think Arizona knows they are surprised at themselves, but they are going against a really, really, as you said, the defense. If Dallas gets through the playoffs, it's going to be because the defense keeps them in every game. And so this one, 51.5 points, as good as they are, I can see this one turning around. Arizona's it's going to be dry. They know that they've got to make up for some lost ground, if you will, because of their the recent games that they've played. So give me Arizona to cover +6 on this one, and I'll even go over 51.
Yeah, I like the over as well. And I agree with you, Dallas. I mean, it got to a point out there. It was, almost hard to watch. And I will say it's different. We'll get to Cincinnati later. We'll get to Baltimore as well. I know there was John Harbaugh talking about how that was, he didn't like it being ran up. I will also remind Mr. Harbaugh that earlier in the season, the last play of the game, instead of taking a knee, he had Lamar Jackson run for 3 or 4 more yards to keep some record alive that, when asked after, Lamar Jackson had absolutely no idea about, even though Harbaugh said the guys really wanted it. So I think a big difference there, and I completely agree with you. It wasn't necessary. I'm not asking to kneel on the ball, but it was like I said, hard to watch. Kind of one of those UFC fights where you're just hoping the ref eventually kind of gets in there and says, "Hey, you can't see out of that eye. Let's figure out a way to get out of here with everyone okay down the road." So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Arizona, we'll see how that goes. But Cliff Kingsbury's got to get a hold of the reins quickly. They have clinched the playoff spot, so it's not up against the plank yet, but they do not want to go into the playoffs on the run they're on right now. So moving on to a matchup with the Carolina Panthers, who are eliminated from playoff contention. They'll head to New Orleans, who the Saints, after this past week, their loss, need a win out and a lot of help in front of them. They are still alive, but they are the 10 seed currently. The Saints are 7.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 38. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started on this NFC South matchup.
Yeah, sometimes I look at these and it's like, well, Carolina, or whoever the underdog is, they can pull it together. They can at least cover the spread. I don't know that Carolina can cover the spread. They have just shown nothing, pretty much the entire season. And New Orleans, they've played pretty well of late. So let's go ahead. I probably push it down to a straight 7 points. Maybe even look at it, because I don't know what the situation is down as far as injury and COVID.
I believe Taysom Hill should be back. I don't think we're going to see Ian Book start.
But they do have 20 people on the COVID list.
He is? Okay.
He is not on the one that came out yesterday.
Gotcha.
So he should be back, but my goodness, they are just ravaged. On the defensive side, they got 1 linebacker, 2 defensive backs, 2 linebacker, a safety, 2 defensive ends, 2 defensive tackles, another cornerback, another safety, another linebacker. So, and so when you look at that, then can they cover the 7? Yeah, I still think they'll cover the 7.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Carolina beat New Orleans back. I think it was week 2 in a big surprise that beginning of the season for Carolina that saw them get to 3-0. This is obviously different. It is in New Orleans. The 7.5, I kind of just leave, but I do like the under here. This is an offense, 2 offenses that have struggled of late. And 2 defenses that at the very least, maybe not so much last week for Carolina, but I think at the very least they've kept them in games, or at least held teams to numbers that should normally keep teams in games. For New Orleans, I keep going back. You only score 9 points, and not only do you win, but you win by 2 possessions. That's when somebody needs to have got that defensive unit a very nice gift for that one. It'll be interesting here, but until I see something different from these 2 offenses, I'm going to take the under, even if it is kind of that paltry number of 38. So moving on to a big NFC East matchup. It is the Philadelphia Eagles heading to the Washington football team. The Eagles are 3.5-point favorites. 45.5 is the over under. Rain is a possibility, not expecting snow. Seems like it's going to actually be a pretty warm day for that part of the neck of the woods, if you will, for that time of year. High 50s, low 60s. That might even be better than what we see here in Southern California, or at least here in San Diego on Sunday, but we'll see. A lot can change before then. Obviously, I'll start this one off with the Eagles being my domain. It was a nice win this past weekend, and I kind of did feel a little bit like it was maybe not so as dramatic as the way what the Cowboys did to the football team, but going into half it was 3-3, and the second half you could just tell the overall depth that of the Giants just not being there. It was tough to watch, huge holes being opened up, and I think we're going to see that happen again, to be honest, against another beaten up Washington team. Jalen Hurts, as good as he looks, look, I'm a huge fan of consistency. Even when I bartended, I didn't care if you came in 3 or 4 times a week and you were regular and you're always crabby and blah, blah. I can deal with that. It's the people that come in that are hot and cold. Some days they're crabby, some days they're your best friend. That's the one you don't know how to deal with. Jalen Hurts, a lot of games this year, you look at half by half comparisons and you go, man, if only he can figure it out in this half or that half. Now, at the very least, the adjustments are working or whatever needs to be done. However, that's not going to fly late in the season. With the way this offense is constructed, you can't go down 10-0 to Tampa Bay like they did a couple weeks ago against Washington and expect to get back in that game. But once again, I think they should cover here. Only 3.5 points. I do think this gets the job done. In terms of the over-under, 45.5. It's tough because surprisingly, the Eagles, they could put some points up, even with the way their offense scores. I mean, they only scored 3 in the first half, ended up putting 34 up overall. So they can put points up quickly for a team that runs the ball as much as they do. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm not touching it on the over-under, but I'm going to break my rule of betting the Eagles on the points because, look, I just think 3.5. I think anything, more or less than 7, you should feel really confident about the Eagles and maybe all the way up to 10, but that's for others. 3.5, I'll take all day. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Eagles heading to the Landover to face the football team.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I just don't understand how it's only 3.5, and that's not a disrespect to the Washington football team at all, but just, my goodness, they are depleted. That's just no other way around it, no other way to say it. And even if it's rain and no snow, let me tell you, the way your team is running that ball, that's fine. They're going to take that all day long. Let's keep it on the ground. Let's run for 200 yards. We don't care. That's where it's going to stay under 46 in this one. I know it's 45.5. Always taken for me. Take that half point just to make sure. But I think Philadelphia's got this one well under control before even the kickoff.
Yeah, and let's be honest, that stadium at the best is going to be 50-50 in terms of the fans. So I don't think the home field advantage is a big factor here. Would not be surprised if it's majority Eagle fans. You know how we travel. We're like the plague. Just get over it and get on with it. We're everywhere and anywhere at all times. So moving on to maybe the game of the weekend, a possible AFC championship matchup, a game that I'm calling a measuring stick. It is Kansas City at the Cincinnati Bengals. The measuring stick game would be, of course, for the Bengals to see where they are in kind of the hierarchy of the AFC. The Chiefs at the moment, the pole position for the 1 seed. I believe they are the only AFC team that has clinched, but I could be wrong there. But they are the 1 seed for sure. At the moment, Cincinnati is the 3 seed, top of the NFC North in the driver's seat there. Currently, Kansas City on the road is 5-point favorites. 49.5 is the over-under. The weather report, mid-30s, rain or snow is possible. So that will be something to keep an eye on. When you wake up Sunday morning, check the weather in Cincinnati because that will kind of be up in the air. But Raider Jim, you got Kansas City in the NFC or AFC West. This is your domain. What are your thoughts? They're heading to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think I heard earlier today that Andy Reid has said that Kelsey will be playing. He's already cleared, I guess, COVID protocol. So he will be back in the lineup, meaning that they're going to have all the guns ready to go. And even with that on the road in Cincinnati, I'm telling you what, more and more and more, I'm watching that team. And these guys have their act together. Cincinnati at home, I'll take a whole point plus 6, but I think over 49.5 is not going to be a problem for these two teams. I understand rain and snow possible, but these teams have a way of moving the ball, and Kansas City does it outdoors all day long, every weekend anyway.
Yeah, I know Edwards-Helaire this past weekend, it looked like it was going to be very serious injury. That's not the case, but I don't think he'll be playing this weekend, but it's not long-term, season ending or whatever. We'll see him down the road. But I agree with you. Cincinnati, and that's why I call it a measuring stick. They've looked really good against teams, but this is kind of the king of the castle in the AFC. No matter what you think, I know they were 3-4. Well, guess where they are now? They're at the top again. They look like a complete football team. If Cincinnati goes out, gets this win, wow, that would put everyone on notice. But conversely, if they go out and struggle, then all of a sudden we're wondering, okay, is it worth playing the playoffs? Can we just put Kansas City in on the AFC side? The offensive talent that Cincinnati has, I think, is literally weatherproof. I think they can go out, get the job done. Now, we're not talking, a blizzard or a monsoon. Obviously, there are limits to things. But with Joe Burrow, what we saw last week, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, I think they're the first team ever with a 4,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, and 2,000-yard wide receivers. That is incredible. Mainly for the fact that everyone stayed healthy, I think, and especially in the season that we've seen this year. So I think Cincinnati, it's tough, but until Kansas City is kind of knocked off that perch, I'm going to ride with them. I do like the over here once again, unless we're not looking at, crazy weather. But yeah, I'm just going to have to keep riding with Kansas City to cover until I see differently. I just think Kansas City's right there in terms of that stratosphere in Green Bay. They are the best of the best right now, but could be wrong. It's going to be very interesting. I can't wait for that one. I don't know what time that is. Hopefully it's a 125 game, so I'll be able to enjoy it as opposed to having to watch the Eagles and football team. But moving on to a matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are obviously eliminated from playoff contention. They will head to New England, or Foxborough to be exact, to face the New England Patriots, who just a few weeks ago were thinking about possible 1 seed. Now they are hoping they can get into a top 4 seed, but it won't probably be likely. They are the 6th seed at the moment. The Patriots are 14.5 point favorites in this game. 41.5 is the over under. Weather doesn't look terrible. Mid 50s is the temperature. Rain is possible, but once again, mid 50s in early January in that neck of the woods is not anything to deal with too much. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Jacksonville heading to Foxborough. Yikes. How bad could this one get?
The Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe it really wasn't all Urban Meyer's fault. I mean, they've lost 7 in a row. And what is the last 2 or 3 now has been since he got, removed from the helm, if you will. And they've got, as of yesterday, 21 players on the COVID protocol list. And I just saw that 4 more have been added. So you're talking 25 out of that's half of a squad is out. So, and I understand they've got practice people, they can bring free agents in, they can, if they find a big guy shagging grocery carts in a parking lot, they'll bring him onto the team. All fine and well, but Bill Belichick is just going to go for it, and he's got to go for it. So maybe take a half off, maybe take a whole point off, but I think they'll cover the as much as I don't like these big spreads. I think New England covers this one. Over under at 41.5. Possible rain, not for sure. I think the only reason it stays under 42 is because I don't think Jacksonville's going to move the ball at all. Yeah. If they get a field goal in each half, good for them, but it's going to be tough going, I think.
Trevor Lawrence is the first quarterback since 1950 to have 10 games or more with 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I mean, yeah, you could look at it and go, hey, he didn't throw interception in those 10 games, but I mean, there is 0 confidence either in the play calling, or I believe me, I'm definitely not a Jacksonville 2021 scholar and can break film down for you because I'm not a masochist, but it's a situation of, what do they do offensively? And now you're getting a team in New England who for the last 2 weeks has really taken it on the chin. And Bill Belichick looks at this and goes, oh, you thought Dallas, Washington was Bush League, Raider Jim? Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to aim for 100. Belichick, yeah, I would not be surprised to see Mac Jones slinging it with 2 minutes left, up 77-0. I'm serious. I think Belichick is just that wild animal that has just been kind of put in captivity and just tearing up his cage because he's not having it. He doesn't know how else to lash out. This is going to get ugly. Best of luck to all the players. But we could possibly see a 42-0 and just get the over that way. But I do tend to agree with you. I'm kind of tongue in cheek right now. I would probably bet the under side of things. New England is still probably a good spot to win or to get into the playoffs. So I don't think we're going to see too much trickery or, things like that. But it's going to be interesting to see New England kind of get a team that's not doing very well and see what they can do kind of to vent their frustrations, if you will. So moving on to a possible matchup. If the season had ended last weekend, this would be a wild card matchup. It's the resurgent Miami Dolphins at the 7 seed. They would head to Tennessee as the 2 seed. Titans in Nashville. The spread here is the Titans by 3.5, and the over under here is 40. Even the weather report looking like mid 30s with thunderstorms being a possibility. I only put thunderstorms in there because not only will you see rain and stuff like that, this could be a game that, is possibly delayed an hour or two. When you
Right.
apparently, weather wise, if you see lightning or whatever it is, they have to delay the game for 30 minutes. That's not NFL rules. That is just safety rules. So keep that in mind. But it doesn't look like we'll see snow in that area, but it will be cold and probably pretty rainy. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Miami at Tennessee, the Titans 3.5-point favorites.
I mean, you can't overlook Miami. They've put together a good run over the last 7 weeks. I think they've pulled off 7 in a row. They've got themselves in a playoff position. But at the same time, here's what's going to go against them. And I think I might question the 3.5 with Tennessee, except for that forecast, because that's going to force Miami, could force Miami to do more of a ground game. Tennessee's pass defense is not that good. Matter of fact, they're towards the bottom in pass defense, but the run defense is stout. They're giving up less than 100 yards a game, and I think that is what's going to keep Tennessee in this game. I think that's what's going to allow them to cover. So give me under. I might go. Let's see. Definitely 3. -3. I might go a whole point and say 2.5 for Tennessee in this one, but the over under at 40. I can see it. I can see it being under in this one, but only because of the weather.
Yeah, Tennessee's that resilient team, that team that you just kind of have forgotten about, and all of a sudden we're 2 weeks away from the season ending, and they're a 2 seed without their best offensive weapon, by the way.
Right.
It hasn't exactly gone to plan. The Julio Jones, I don't want to call it experiment, but that hasn't paid off too much. AJ Brown has been a walking question mark about health. When he's on the field, he's fantastic, but it seems like he's been questionable every single week. Yet somehow the Titans are a 2 seed. And on the opposite side of things, I mean, very few teams. I mean, the Eagles were looking at 3 top 5, top 7 picks with the way the Colts started, the Eagles started, and the Dolphins started. Now all 3 of those picks look like playoff picks. It's the resurgence in Miami with Brian Flores has been amazing. And really excited to see where it goes from here. In terms of this game, though, I tend to think I'm going to, if you're going to give me points on a team that's won 7 straight games, I'm going to take it. But I like the 3.5. Turn this into a field goal game. Give me Miami to get that cover. Whether they win, that's a different story. But I also do like the under 40. I just think both of these offenses may struggle just a tiny bit with that weather. So moving on to the AFC West matchup, Denver Broncos heading to SoFi Stadium to take on the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are 6.5-point favorites. The over under here is 45. We are, of course, in a dome. This is looks like we lost Raider Jim, so let's give him a moment. I'll give my thoughts on this, and I think Raider Jim will hop back in here in a moment. So hang with me for a moment. But usually I go to Raider Jim to start us off, but in this one, Broncos heading to SoFi. This is going to be an interesting one. 6.5 is obviously right on that little like threshold that you wonder about in terms of, obviously a touchdown being that point. Essentially it's an ask of, do you think the Chargers win by a touchdown or more when you have 6.5 being the number? I think that's a big number for a team that lost by 12 to Houston, 12 or 14, whatever it was. No matter what the COVID frustrations were. Look, Justin Herbert was still there. He had some weapons. I know there were some big players that were out, but you should have gotten the job done against a good Houston team. They did not. In terms of the over under 45, look, that's kind of right there. 24-21, you could very easily see being the case. That would give you a push. So however you want to kind of see that. I do like Denver here, though, to get that cover at 6.5, because I think the Chargers are going to, it's not going to be a walk in the park for them. They're going to struggle a bit, and we'll see how that goes. Also, you're not going to see a home field advantage here at SoFi. You're going to have a lot of Raider fans cruising in to LA and seeing exactly, what SoFi is all about. Even when they were in San Diego, down here in San Diego, and the Chargers were, getting as many fans packed in there as they could on a Sunday. there were always a lot of Raider fans that traveled. Obviously, a lot less fans around that area and a lot less fans that are willing to kind of go because it's going to be, it won't affect the game on the inside of the field or inside of the dome, but you do expect to see some weather. So that may affect some people traveling up here from San Diego to LA. Maybe don't want to take that road trip if they can avoid it. That 2 hours up to 5, that is never a whole lot of fun, no matter what day of the week it is. So still waiting on Raider Jim. Hopefully he can hop back, but we'll keep powering forward. Next up is the Houston Texans heading to San Francisco. The Texans are eliminated from playoff contention. The 49ers are the 6th seed at the moment. They've been on a bit of a resurgence as well. 12.5 is the number here, with the Niners being the favorites. The over-under here is 44. In terms of the weather up in San Francisco, it's going to be in the mid-50s. Rain is a possibility. And then, of course, you always do have the wind, although Santa Clara not nearly as averse to wind as we used to see old candlesticks. So moving on in this one, 12.5 is a big number for a team like San Francisco. They're kind of that grinded out game. You will see, from what I've been hearing and from what I've been reading, that this is kind of the beginning of the Trey Lance era. The Niners have been looking for excuses to, begin the Trey Lance era. And Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't given them then. Well, now he's hurt again, I believe, a bad thumb. That's opened the door up for Trey Lance to kind of step in and see what he can do. And I think that's what the Niners want going forward. So interesting storyline going in to next offseason. But for now, the Niners 12.5 point favorites. I was actually impressed with what I saw from Houston last week, notably Davis Mills. He went out, Davis Mills or David Mills, I'm not sure, but Mills, he went out and he made a lot of throws that, once again, maybe not consistently made these throws, but he was very, very precise in a lot of times. And it's going to be difficult. You're facing a Niners defense that's very good and going to get after you. But I think 12.5 is too much in this situation. Give me Houston to cover that 12.5. But I'm not terribly confident. Probably won't really bet it. But, for the sake of the podcast, that would be my pick. In terms of the over-under, I think it's an under is a safe bet with rain. And then you also have, like I said, the Kyle Shanahan way he wants to do it, at least right now. Run the ball, grind it out, as few possessions as possible, make the most of those possessions, win the game, move on to next week. I don't think Kyle Shanahan's worried about covering or getting any overs for the betting public. So moving on to, it sounds like Raider Jim's trying to get back in, so we'll give him a moment, but we'll definitely ask him for his thoughts on the Charger Bronco game and get caught up when he does get back. But I'll keep pounding through this. Detroit at Seattle. The Lions are 7-point underdogs here in this one. Is Seattle -7. 42.5 is the over-under number. In terms of the weather, we're going to be looking at 40s, the temperature in the 40s with rain. That's probably expected. I mean, it's a pretty safe bet in Seattle. We obviously saw this past weekend. The snow was a very big factor. But looking at this one, obviously both of these teams, it's been a very, very long time since we've gone in to a late December game when the Seattle Seahawks have nothing to play for. That is the case. Both of these teams, nothing to play for, with Detroit, of course, eliminated as is Seattle. It's going to be an interesting one because Goff returning off the COVID list helps. 7 points for Seattle. It's kind of a lot. The home field advantage, it's going to be there. It's going to be loud, but I don't think you're going to see that fervor that we normally see from a team that they're used to seeing. They're used to seeing being in December, cheering for a playoff berth or a division title. Excuse me. So in this situation, I think the 7 right here is a very safe bet for Detroit, but let's let Raider Jim back in. Get him all ready. All right, looks like he's back.
I froze. I think
No
it was.
worries. It's cold here in San Diego. You know, we know how it now. Just kidding.
I think
But
Jerry Jones didn't like what I said.
yeah, pulled the plug. He's got Bush League on reference, and anytime anyone says it, we're not even live, but he's busting in to our IP address and getting that done. But Raider Jim, I went along with a couple of my picks, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on two that I have already gone through. But what about Denver at the Chargers? Chargers being 6.5-point favorites with the over under being 45.
You know, I'm glad I made the remarks last week that this is about the time of year the Chargers step up and do their thing. And boy, didn't they do it last week. That was, whoa, what an abysmal game they played last week against. And I shouldn't say that. What I should say is what a great game Houston played, because they really put it together. And when they saw it, they did something that the Raiders have not been able to do consistently throughout the year. And that is, when they got the opponent down on the mat, they did not let them up. They just kept attacking and attacking and attacking, and they showed the killer instinct. I can see Denver pulling off this one at +7. No problem. Do they get the victory? They may even get the victory, but the Chargers, I don't know. It's this is just how they play the game. I don't think they're going to do any better this week than they did last. And Denver would love to come out and be the spoiler. And so I think that's what we're going to see. Denver's going to be the spoiler. Give me Denver +7 on this one. I will say, I think they'll go over 45. Denver's going to be a better offense this week than they were against the Raiders. But wow, it's just not going to be a good game, I don't think, for the Chargers.
Yeah, and I also threw out the fact that, you know, it's not going to be a home game. It might be a home game in terms of we're not traveling and you're not in a hotel, but it's going to be a heavy majority of the Orange Crush Nation, I believe is how they refer to themselves, those Bronco fans. So you're going to hear a lot of those incompletes, or at least if Herbert acquiesces to that. But Raider Jim, I also did talk about Houston at San Francisco. San Francisco 12.5-point favorites, the over under being 44. The weather, rain is definitely a possibility. But the temperature should be in the mid 50s. What are your thoughts there with San Francisco being a big favorite against the Texans?
Yeah, San Francisco is a different team than the LA Chargers. That's for sure. And so while Houston has been able to, they showed great success last week, they're going to come up against a much different team up in the Bay Area. 12.5, that still is a bit too much for me. I don't know if I would touch the spread on this one. I do like the rain is possible, but not for sure. And given what Houston was able to do last week, you know, it could go either way, but I think I would go under 44.5 in this one.
Yeah. I also brought up, you know, the question marks. I mean, Mills looked really good. Davis or David Mills, I get those mixed up, but he looked really good last week. If he can continue, that would be obviously something for Houston that they would enjoy if he can maybe prove some of that. But this was a game that I know, Raider Jim, before we got rolling, this was the one you kind of pointed out, like, I mean, do we really have to play it? But it is Detroit at Seattle. Seattle being 7-point favorites, the over under here being 42. And then, as I said, or just a little bit before you hop back on, the weather being in the 40s with rain more than likely. But what are your thoughts, Seattle and Detroit, in a game that, let's be honest, doesn't matter for anything but draft positioning?
That's really it. And I think if anything, it's Russell Wilson. It could be his farewell to the Seattle fans. I don't know if he's going to be back next year. Pete Carroll too. I mean, what a shock it has to be for that Seattle fan base. I said that earlier in the year, and they never did get their feet under them. And now look where they're at. They're outside looking in, which is not usually the case for the Seattle Seahawks. I think they cover this one at 7. Maybe you want to take it down to 6, 42.5 with rain, 40 degrees. There's not going to be a lot of offense in this one. So under 42.5, you should be fine.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a pretty ugly game. I feel like once or twice a week, we have certain games that maybe we should call them, name your number instead of picking the actual game. It's how much money would you need to be paid to actually sit down and watch this game for 3 hours? This is definitely one of them. Hope everyone stays safe. No one, has a catastrophic injury in a game like this or anything like that. But yeah, it's going to be pretty ugly, both weather-wise and football-wise. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on, as we finish things up, of course, remember, these games minus the last one will be on Sunday. So we have no Thursday, we have no Saturday game. So folks, on Sunday, we are going to have a lot of football. Red Zone's going to be going crazy. It's going to be a lot of fun. But anyways, the Rams are heading to Baltimore. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 46.5. Looking at the weather in Baltimore, rain is a possibility, but the temperature is going to be in the high 50s. So, once again, it might be a little slickness to that, but you're not going to, more than likely, unless the expectations drop at least 20 or 30 degrees, you're not going to see snow, maybe a little rainy and tough to hold on to the football, but you're going to be somewhat comfortable, mid 50s or high 50s in January in Baltimore is barbecue weather, as I used to call it. So moving on here, it's let's see, Rams 3.5-point favorites. I am interested to see how Baltimore responds, because very few teams have fallen as far as Baltimore has. This was a team that was flirting with the 1 seed. They are now 10th in this playoff race. Not only do they need to win out, but they need a lot of help. It's going to be very, very interesting here. I will say I looked up for the Rams. They are 3-1 this year, going across country. And this will be another cross-country trip. Their only loss going across country, of course, was to the Green Bay Packers. This is the other team that is fighting to stay in either the 2 or 3 spot so that they don't have to make that trip divisional weekend to Green Bay. So I do like the Rams to cover this 3.5 because I do think, it's not going to be a snowstorm. So, with the rainstorm, that's not ideal. But I think we're going to be just fine weather-wise. In terms of the over-under, I think we're going to see some points being scored. I like over 46.5, but I do like the Rams. Maybe bet it down to 3, just cover yourself for a backdoor, or that turns into a last-second field goal. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Rams going across country to face the Ravens.
Yeah, you talk about 2 teams going opposite directions. Rams have won the last 4. Baltimore's lost the last 4, and they just haven't shown that they have all the confidence in the world or the right game plans when they get on the field. So I think the Rams take this one. I think the Rams cover at 3.5, no problem. Like you, I like the under in this one though. I like the over in this one. The Baltimore has hit the over the last 3 games, even though they've lost. They've hit over on the over-unders.
Yeah, and even for Stafford, I know he cut his teeth in a dome, but there were plenty of trips to Chicago and Green Bay so that he, at the very least knows what to expect. And we're not going to see, like I said, unless something drastically changes for Baltimore's weather report, we're not going to see at least snow. Could be a little sloppy with the rain, but it's still going to be pretty warm for that time of year. So moving on to Sunday Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings are Minnesota Vikings are the 8th seed, currently the first team on the outside looking in. The Green Bay Packers are the current top seed in the NFC. They are also 6.5-point favorites in this game. The over-under sits at 47.5. The weather report, this is interesting. It's going to be clear. Don't expect to see snow. Could change. But we're going to be looking at something around 0 to 5 degrees, and that is not the wind chill, folks. So with the wind chill, you have to imagine at best you're going to be looking at -5, -10 for that wind chill. So definitely keep an eye on this one. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started. This is kind of the main reason nobody wants to go to Green Bay divisional weekend, right? For a game like this, it might not be snowing, but it is going to be very, very cold.
Hats off. I will like the entertainment value of seeing people wearing both Viking helmets and cheese heads and no shirts because they think that they have to do that in this kind of weather. I'm a California native. I really don't even understand this. My son lived in Milwaukee for a while, and every now and then I'd call him and I'd say, well, what's the temperature? And he'd say 7. So it's 7 what? And he said 7. That's it, man. And it's not getting any hotter today. It's 7. So and then he explained, he said, like, and it's so cold it can't snow.
Yeah.
Really? That's such a thing, you tell me. Green Bay hasn't lost at home this year. They're not going to lose at home on Sunday. These guys are controlling their own destiny, and like his stance on COVID and vaccines and things like that or not, again, the man's a robot. Aaron Rodgers is a robot. He's programmed to play football and win football games. They will play, they will win, they will cover the 6.5. 47.5. It should be, but it's going to be interesting because it just depends what they're able to do on the frozen, on the frozen tundra of Lambeau.
Yeah. And it will be frozen. Maybe not on your television sets, but it's going to be, like I said, very, very cold. And this is perfect. This is what Green Bay wants. And for me, it's always kind of been the trade-off for the Vikings, right? They were at the Metrodome and now they're at whatever, I think US Bank. But, kind of embrace that. You're going to have to go to Chicago. You're going to have to go to Green Bay. Your home field should be a little open too. You don't want to kind of get into that mindset of, ooh, it's nice and warm in here. Now you got to go play on Sunday night as well. So that drops it even more. The cold could be a factor, but not for Rodgers. He's going to go out, get the job done. I don't think 6.5 is a worry for me. I think the Packers easily go out. They're very similar to Kansas City in my mind.
Agreed.
Until someone goes out and can compete with this team. I mean, I know Baltimore a couple of weeks ago were close with them, but I never really felt like that game was in doubt. I mean, even if Harbaugh kicks the extra point, I think the Packers probably win in overtime. But it's going to be very interesting going forward. Not this week for the Packers, though. They easily cover the 6.5. You almost want to go like stop the podcast right now. Hope you can find that number because I think it's only going to go up. And then the over under 47.5. I'll be honest, I could see this turning into a shootout. Kirk Cousins, he might struggle. I think more for the wide receivers, catching those balls, it's difficult. It stings. Everything is more difficult in the cold. But I do think we could see a shootout go on. Like I said, as long as the wind isn't a factor and as long as we don't have any kind of snow coming in late or switching things up. But it's going to be very interesting on Sunday night to see how that shakes out. But looking ahead to the final game that we'll talk about in the final game of week 17, it is Monday Night Football. The Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Browns on the road are 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 40.5. Looking at the weather, they're going to be the high 20s. We could see either rain or snow being a possibility for Monday night. This is essentially a game of, well, look how bad we did last week, and the other team going, yeah, but look how bad we did last week. But Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started when it comes to Cleveland being 3-point favorites on the road against their old rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, Pittsburgh was a big disappointment for me last week. I didn't think by any means they would lose, maybe not win. I didn't think they would lose the way they lost. And that, I don't know if that speaks more to who they really are or who Kansas City really is. Combination of the both possibly. But I will tell you, as far as Sunday goes, Cleveland's not much better. And they have also just been, I get it, they've been beat up. They have been, they've dealt with COVID on so many levels and just injuries in general. But going into Pittsburgh in what is probably Big Ben's final home game, I don't see Pittsburgh losing this one. You give me Pittsburgh plus 3.5, give me under 41, and I think there's your game.
Yeah, I have the theory, if I'm going to bet a game like this, two bad football teams, take the points at all situations, and then they're at home, take that as well. This is essentially an elimination game. However, by no means does that mean that whoever comes out victorious, that they're feeling good. They're still, I'm not sure the situation, but there's a chance that both of these teams are eliminated by kickoff. I don't know. I know there's a chance that one of them could be eliminated, but there's a lot of, the NFL is kind of crazy. And the fact you throw in that the Steelers already have a tie. There's a lot of times you'll see, with a win or a tie, they clinch. Well, now, or are eliminated. Well, now they've already had that quote unquote tie. So it's a little more interesting, but this is going to be another one of those, fans of these teams will watch, but it's not going to look too good. In terms of the weather, of course, I do think being a factor here. Give me the under. Just two offenses that are really, really struggling. And one thing I will say about Pittsburgh this year, I really thought the storyline was going to be the decline of Ben Roethlisberger and kind of a situation where he's forced into retirement. And that is still the case. But I think the narrative of this team now is that Tomlin has either lost the locker room or the Steeler way is no longer the Steeler way. We saw a few weeks ago Chase Claypool kind of get up and dance or whatever, do his thing instead of giving the ball to the referee to spot it and whatever, save 20 seconds, 15 seconds. And then this past weekend, I don't know what the DB was, but he breaks up a ball in the end zone. They're down 30-0, mind you, 30-0 on the road. And this guy celebrates like he just, kept them out of the end zone and they're going to the freaking Super Bowl. It was ridiculous. That to me shows that, like I said, either Tomlin's just, and I believe me, I've worked with, let's just call them youngsters or young kids to TikTok and stuff like that. It's very frustrating. And at some point you do get to the factor, you just throw your hands up and go, you know what, I can't do it anymore. And I think that's where Tomlin is at right now. And for a better, that's scary to me. But it is still a rivalry game. I think it is Roethlisberger's more than likely his last home game. I don't know if they're at home next week, but I feel like this will be.
They are not. They're playing at Baltimore, I believe it is. This is
going to be Roethlisberger's swan song. I think, he does enough to get the job done. I mean, he's going to try to. Does he have the capabilities? That's another story. But once again, if I have to bet a game with two bad football teams, give me the points, and then even better that it being at home. But that's all we got for you here for week 17. Plenty breaking down. Looks like it's about an hour and 15 minutes of good stuff there for you all to break down. But Raider Jim, any final thoughts as we get ready? Essentially, this time next week, we'll be talking about essentially teams sitting because the playoffs are right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. The first Sunday of football in the new year will happen this coming weekend. Everybody stay out, be safe. A good friend of ours, Officer Jim Betancourt, the California Highway Patrol, would tell us all, and we will endorse him. Do not drink, do not drive, be smart. It's not worth it. What you're putting on the line is a lot more than just yourself. It's the people in the other cars, the other vehicles, your family, your livelihood. Please be smart.
Amen. As I've said many a times, I'm a former bartender. If you can afford to go out and spend $10, $12 on a drink and upwards of that, and you can have multiple of those to the point where you are inebriated, you can afford that 20. And I know Uber's gone up. Believe me, I know. I've seen it. But you know what? It still pales in comparison to not only the risk you take for your own life, but others. And then not only the monetary risk that you would take if you do get pulled over. That is a life-changing fine. So at the very least, look out for yourself in that situation, but mainly for others, especially around this time of year. It would be absolutely devastating for a family to have to do something like that around the holidays, because I'll tell you what, it affects everything going forward too. This time of year, there are a lot of people who don't like the holidays because of things like that. So that is all we have for you. Once again, be safe and have a happy new year. We will be back, of course, next week to get you ready for the final run-in of the season. I'll be honest with you, there may be some games that we just kind of don't even talk about because I think it's kind of week 18, week 1 are really difficult to pick because you're not quite sure how teams are going to go about it. But definitely in 2 weeks, we're going to be getting you ready for some very important games of Wild Card Weekend. But thank you all so much for listening to week 17's edition of the NFL Weekly here on the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. It's time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care and be safe.